Clerk, call the roll.
Lynn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
William Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Thank you. Our invocation this morning will be delivered by Reverend Paula Jefferson. It's good to see you again. She's from St. Martin in the Fields Church in Keller.
I know.
Good morning.
Yes, I've known her. I knew her in our past life as a CPA. Then
CPA?
she got good sense and
Well, I heard it.
got
I
out of
knew
the
that.
accounting profession.
Good things have happened.
That's right.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you proclaim your truth in every age by many voices. Direct in our time, we pray, those who speak where many listen and write what many read, that they may do their part in making the heart of this people wise, its mind sound, and its will righteous. You have bound us together in a common life. Help us in the midst of our struggles for justice and truth to confront one another without hatred or bitterness, and to work together with mutual forbearance and respect. Send down upon those who hold office in Tarrant County the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all people. God of abiding love, you choose us as your servants and dare to call us friends. Take our fragmented hearts, commanding them to love, making whole our joy, our life reborn in you. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Paula, for coming out. It's good to see you again. Bill Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have three announcements as it relates to the agenda this morning. The first one is under the County Administrator section, item 8A2. We're going to hold that particular item for a week. Under Human Resources, item 8E4, we're going to remove that from the consent agenda and take that as an action item. There's not an issue with that, but when we did this original order, there was one court member that abstained, and in order to resent this, we want to do this in a open session. And then finally, members of court, on item 8G3, this is court order number 134213, and we are going to ask that we hold that particular item until next week. As we have done in the past, we're going to rearrange the agenda a little bit this morning. When we come to the administrator section, we will have a general overview. Ms. South is going to be doing that. Then we will have a presentation by the Health Science Center as it relates to COVID-related activities. And then Mr. Tenage will be giving his weekly report after that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of March the 30th.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We have a couple of proclamations, and we have our employee recognition. Because of my voice, I have asked if Commissioner Allen would be agreeable to read my proclamation, and so if you would do that, I would appreciate it. And well, I guess let me ask that the crowd come on down, Julie. Well, and one other thing before we get to that, there was a little game last night, and the Bears just mauled Gonzaga. And it was a great game, and congrats on Rebecca as a graduate of that fine university, as is one of my nieces, and she was very much looking excited. And really, they ought to be holding celebrations for the women and the men, but unfortunately, there was a little problem with referees and
With the whistle.
with the women. Again, congratulations to Baylor. They had a great game last night, and the ball game was never in question. So we're excited about it. Now, Julie, if you'll bring your group down. And Commissioner Allen, if you'll read the proclamation.
Yes. This is a proclamation recognizing Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas children are our future and our greatest resource. And whereas every child deserves a nurturing family and safe environment to grow into a healthy, productive member of the community. Whereas child abuse is one of our nation's most serious public health problems and threatens the safety of our community. And whereas in Tarrant County, 6,203 children were confirmed as victims of child abuse or neglect in 2020. Whereas finding solutions to prevent child abuse is a community responsibility and depends on the involvement of all citizens. And whereas effective child abuse prevention, investigation, and treatment programs succeed because of partnerships among public and private agencies, schools, religious organizations, medical services, and the business community. Now therefore be resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2021 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Tarrant County, and further we urge all citizens to be aware of the signs of child abuse and to protect the children of Tarrant County. In witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed the 6th day of April 2021.
I'll move its approval.
And I'll second.
Our motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. This has been a cause that has been very important to me from the very beginning of my term as commissioner. That was shortly after that we put the facility there in North Easton. So y'all all get in here and I'll get the picture took. It's got to flash 3 times or don't count. Say anything you like.
Hi, Julie. How are you?
I'm well. How about you?
Good.
Thank you so much for this, and thanks for letting us come in person while we're small crew, but mighty, representing several that weren't going to be able to be in person today because of limited numbers, which we certainly understand. Know that regardless, there is a team of people standing behind your kids and walking alongside them. We recognize that we are only strong for our kids when we're working together and working in collaboration. We certainly see you demonstrate that day in and day out as a county leaders about the importance of collaboration. That's something we take to heart, whether it's through investigation, through service delivery, through prevention work. You've got it all represented here. So know that we stand together and we stand for your kids. We long for the day where we see those numbers go down. And yet until that happens, know that we're ready to serve every one of them. That we are ready to provide trauma-informed treatment, provide their mental health needs. It's been a hard year in so many ways.
Yes, it has.
And it's been a hard year for our kids. I think the year ahead, we need to prepare ourselves that the numbers are likely going to skyrocket in the fall. When our kids truly return to in-person and truly get back to all of the protective adults that we layer for our kids. So we're preparing for that. We're preparing to be ready, whether it's from the law enforcement side, the child protective side, your prosecution team. Every bit of it remains strong, as well as your service providers. Thank you for always being leaders that are willing to have difficult conversations. I know I've said this before, but now working across the state and nation with other children's advocacy centers, gosh, am I reminded about how blessed we are to have leaders that are willing to acknowledge that our kids are walking through trauma and what does it look like when we walk alongside them. So thank you for that. Judge. we wouldn't be here without you and your heart for victims across Tarrant County. So for all that you've done, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Thank y'all for the work you do for our children.
Commissioner Brooks.
Thank you, Your Honor. I am pleased to share sponsorship of this resolution with Commissioner Allen. This is a proclamation for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and it reads, whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month is recognized nationally during the month of April to raise awareness and increase prevention efforts around the issues of sexual violence, including sexual assault, child sexual abuse, and sexual harassment. And whereas more than 6.3 million adults in Texas experience some sort of sexual violence in their lifetimes, and 65% of victims report multiple victimizations. And whereas incorporating the community's subject matter experts and using evidence-based practices will develop a compassionate, accessible criminal justice system that can effectively serve survivors of all ages, races, genders, and socioeconomic classes. And whereas the Women's Center's Rape Crisis and Victim Services Program inspires and empowers child, adolescent, and adult victims to heal from the devastating effects of sexual assault and child sexual abuse, and works to prevent sexual violence and child sexual abuse in Tarrant County. And whereas the center strives to prevent sexual violence in our community through the Play It Safe Child Sexual Abuse Prevention Program, which is provided free of charge to over 100,000 children in Tarrant County annually. And whereas the Women's Center offers a comprehensive, compassionate, and trauma-informed continuum of care to survivors of violence, including crisis intervention, advocacy, clinical counseling, case management, criminal justice, accompanied and criminal justice accompaniment and legal services. Now therefore be it resolved that the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County do hereby proclaim the month of April 2021 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Tarrant County. Further, we affirm this county's commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that provides compassionate support to survivors of sexual violence. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed the 6th day of April 2021, and I move for approval of this proclamation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Dodson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you for my colleagues. Thank you to my colleagues on the dais for wearing teal today, which is the color for sexual assault prevention. To join in us at the podium will be Laura Hillgarth, President and CEO of the Women's Center, Deborah Caddy, Director of Rape Crisis and Victim Services, and Fran McQueen, Marketing and Communications Manager. Please join me, Commissioner Allen, and would our criminal district attorney please join us?
Y'all turn around, look at the camera, and you don't have your best sides forward yet. I didn't almost recognize Rachel in that Channel 5 cap. Brian, don't you have any Fort Worth Star-Telegram hats out there? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Laura Hillgarth, the CEO of the Women's Center, and I am here to thank you for recognizing the importance of sexual assault awareness. We know that 33% of Texans are sexually assaulted, and after 40 years of working with survivors of sexual assault and child sexual abuse, we do know the devastating impact that it has on their mental and physical health. We also know that we are very fortunate to do that work in Tarrant County. I'm going to echo some of what Julie said, because it's absolutely true that we make things happen in this community through a partnership of public and private agencies that does not happen in other communities. And so together, many of those organizations are represented in this courtroom today, but through that partnership, and it is a partnership, and that collaboration, we are preventing sexual assault, we are holding perpetrators accountable for their actions, we are seeking justice for victims, and we are helping survivors heal and take back their lives. In the end, we are building safer and healthier communities on our school and university campuses, in our workplaces, in our homes, and in individual lives. I cannot thank you enough for recognizing the importance of this work and partnering with us to do this work, because in the end, we are building a safer and healthier community for all. So on behalf of all of us who do the work, and on behalf of the survivors of sexual assault primarily, thank you for this proclamation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
This is the first Tuesday in April. Once again, we are not bringing the crew together, but hopefully we're going to do that again very soon. If not May, potentially we're going to try it in June and see where we go from there. But in the meantime, I'd like to run our video and go from there.
Good morning. Because of the COVID-19 virus, we have, and the restrictions that it's placed upon our meetings, I'm sorry to say that we're going to have to postpone our employee recognition. That is one of my favorite times of the month, and so I'm sorry that we're not going to be able to do that this month, but I promise you that when everything gets back to normal, or whatever our new normal is, we'll begin those again, and we'll make up for those meetings and for those months that we've had to miss. Again, I want to thank you personally for what you do for Tarrant County, especially during this time when we've had to face the challenges of the COVID-19 virus. Our employees have always stood up for the test, and you've done exactly the same thing during this time frame. You're what makes Tarrant County such a great place to live, to work, and to raise our family. Again, thank you very much, and I look forward to getting back to our routine of being able to recognize our valued employees on that first Tuesday of every month. Thank you. Good morning. Because of the COVID-19 virus,
Hear it again.
we have,
Just because I can't speak, we're going to be able to, we want to get all of it we can out of this. I would call to your attention in this list of employees that we have one Jacqueline Sargent, who has been with the county for
Precinct
40
8.
years. She is in JP Precinct 8. So I would encourage you to call Jacqueline and congratulate her on her 40 years of service to Tarrant County. With that, I'll move that we receive and file employee recognition.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Court members, you have before you our consent agenda as amended by Mr. Manias.
Move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manias?
Judge, before
Yes.
Mr. Manias, I ask that we adjourn court today in memory of an outstanding public servant, former Crowley City Councilwoman Christine Gilbreth, who lost her life last week.
Thank you very much for remembering. I had that down, so we'll do that at the end of our meeting. We'll close in her memory. Okay, Mr. Manias.
So we're not going to have any other announcements from the courts?
You don't have any?
Actually, I have an announcement.
Too late.
I'm
We're
just-
already.
No.
I'm just saving you the apology, Judge.
Thank you, GK. No, seriously, thank you. So, this Wednesday evening, I will be hosting a town hall on anti-Asian hate crimes. Joining me will be Grand Prairie, Tarrant County Community Leader Matt Lowe, as well as Ty Nguyen with the Grand Prairie Police Department. We are going to have an open and thoughtful conversation about the discrimination that our Asian community has been facing and talk about ways that we can support them and our greater community. So that will be this Wednesday evening from 6 to 7 p.m. on Facebook Live at Commissioner Devin Allen, and you do not need a Facebook account in order to view this town hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen. That is well-timed and very much appreciated.
Your Honor, if we could, before we go into our section, we do have an announcement that we would like to introduce you to our new county engineer. Mr. Skinner, do you want to make that announcement, please?
Morning, board members.
Good morning.
Hey, Randy.
Today I have good news to share with you. We do have a new county engineer. His name is Mr. Joseph Jackson. Joseph, you'll stand in the back. He comes to us from Ellis County, having several years of service as assistant county engineer, and he serves as president of the Texas Association of County Engineers and Road Administrators. So we're very happy to have him on board.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Welcome, Joseph visited this court several months ago when he presented an award to Curtis Knowles of Precinct 1. Welcome aboard.
Your Honor, we do have one audience participation form. It's for an item that is not on the agenda itself. If you would like, we could take that audience participation form now before we go into the discussion on the COVID-19
That would
issue.
be great. Mike, I guess is it Eustace?
You're right.
That doesn't happen very often.
No, that was excellent. Most people can't pronounce it until we have it pronounced to them.
There's a town named that just to the east of here.
Oh, really?
Sorry.
Eustace, Texas?
Judge and commissioners, I won't
Kaufman
take a
and that.
minute here, but I'm a big consumer of national news and not so much the local news, so maybe this is something you guys know about. But I'm concerned about election integrity and the things that go on. I guess you might call it gaming the system, but some people call it fraud. But I read just a national article yesterday that talks about Tarrant County having received a lot of money from Zuckerberg and some others that apparently used unevenly across the county to get out the vote. And I was disturbed by the 2020 election, but when Tarrant County was declared that it was red, when it went blue for Biden, I thought, well, that's not what I was seeing as I drove around, but things happen. But there was two articles, one in November that talked about our elections administrator, and I'm not disparaging, I have no idea about the person, but he was associated with Venezuela politics and Smartmatic years ago, and he was also called to testify in an election in the Philippines that was considered to be maybe not up to snuff. And I'm not saying he personally was involved in anything, but I'm just saying I found it odd that out of the millions of people in the state of Texas that we could probably have hired as an administrator, elections administrator, we wound up with a fellow from Venezuela. And there was an event before the election where we had some 20-something thousand votes that wouldn't run through the machine, and they had to be adjudicated?
No, they had to be duplicated.
And from the council, the local news, it was done right, that there was observers from both parties and maybe even the libertarians, to watch that each vote was actually tallied like it's supposed to be. So I felt fine about that, and I thought things happened. But there was a lot of shenanigans that went on in various counties. You may or may not know all of it. You probably followed some of it. But it was similar to the types of things that went on in Atlanta, Fulton County, Maricopa, and Arizona. And right now, those two counties are undergoing independent audit to find out, was there a fire behind the smoke, or was it just one of those things? And I don't know which one it is, but that's all I want as a citizen to know, that when I vote, that it's a legitimate election. If I come out on the losing end, that's the way it went. My fellow citizens disagreed with me. But what I want to know is that it is a straight-up election. And I don't know that the county is really looking at this. The states up here, they're having a lot of meetings. They're working on election integrity. But I feel like it starts at the county level, because that's where all the election process takes place. And I just want assurance that people are looking at this and making sure that every legitimate vote counts. I want all my fellow citizens to vote, but I don't want my vote diluted by people gaming the system. And as I told you, Zuckerberg, he was prominent in this, but there's lots of outside people with lots of money trying to influence our politics here.
Mr. Eustace, I appreciate your comment. I hope that you will come by and speak with me, because I'll be glad to talk with you about the integrity of our election and some of the comments that you've made. Now, this is under legislation right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've got some bills, and because of that, that's the reason why I'm talking, because it is on the agenda under legislative affairs.
Okay.
And because he's looking at me like you ain't supposed to be saying
Yeah, I
anything.
know we weren't supposed to get a response. So.
But if you'll come by my office, I'll be glad to walk you through the steps that we went through to make sure that the integrity of the election was the top priority. And I can assure you, Mr. Garcia was leading the charge in that.
Well, I hope to hear that was so, because our county, I think, has always been a fairly clean county. We're not the Rio Grande Valley, not to disparage them, but, shenanigans have gone on for years in those places.
And I will also assure you that we went no more blue in this election than we did in the 2018 or in the 2016 election.
Well, I believe Biden carried the county.
Well, that's right, but every other countywide thing, and Biden carried it by 1,800, and Cruz lost by a whole lot more than that in 2018. But the judges who are countywide elected and are far less known won by exactly the same percentages in 16, 18, and 20.
Well, that's good to hear, but if you'll read in that article,
If
I
you'll come by my
highlighted,
office, I'll be glad to talk with you
I
about it.
highlighted one item where Biden got more votes than Hillary did in 16, which is astounding when you think about it.
Thank you.
And Mr. Eustace, I believe, based off of the address that you indicated on your form, that you're a precinct 2 resident, so.
You're my representative.
That's all right.
yes.
I would like for you to visit with Jay Jackson, my precinct administrator, so you all can exchange contact information.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Eustace,
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Brooks.
I cannot let these unsubstantiated allegations
Which one would that
stand
be?
against a good man like Hyder Garcia.
Did you not hear me say? I did not say anything.
A process in Tarrant County and virtually across this nation that has been proven by audits, by investigations, by every judicial measure to have been an open and clean process. Y'all lost.
You know,
Get over it.
You know, when Hillary lost in 16, how did you feel about that?
Okay, that's about it.
Yeah, we're not talking about legislature anymore, so if you'll
But
come
at any
by,
rate, that's your opinion, and mine is not that it's been adjudicated. We'll find out.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so we can now go to the administrator section. We're going to go ahead and ask Ms. South to come forward and make her presentation.
Good morning.
good morning.
Megan, how are you?
I'm okay. How are y'all?
All right.
Okay, let's get started. So a couple of things to note on our pillar slides for this week, mainly underneath the social services pillar. So the 2020 CRF Rental Assistance Program is coming to a close with $8 million paid to date and around 2,404 households assisted. I believe that the last of the applications have been submitted to the auditor's office. Kristen, is that correct? Yes. And that should be hopefully wrapped up by next week. So we'll report back on that final number next week or the following. And then as far as the 2021 Federal Emergency Rental Assistance Program, last time I spoke with y'all that had just launched, so the numbers were small. We've had a full week now to gather the data, and so as of yesterday, 148 landlords and 349 tenants had applied to the program. And I believe last week I told y'all that the paid outreach program would begin in mid-April. That will actually start more towards the end of April, and that will include a campaign that was similar to the previous program that we ran last year for rental assistance. And then that's all that I have on the pillars, I believe. So we'll go ahead. Oh, I do one quick note on the Texas Eviction Diversion Program. We did increase the outreach to the JPs, so that's still in the works. And as of yesterday, 62 applications had been received with 8 approvals that total approximately $57,000 in assistance. Moving on to the vaccination updates. So after court last week, Jessica Mason in our office had sent out a notification that the East Arlington Library testing site location was closing, and their last day of testing was April the 3rd, so they are now closed. The next site that will shut down will be the BJ Clark Annex Center in Azle, and that will happen probably in mid-April. Again, these sites are closing because of the very low testing numbers that are happening at these locations, and then just the availability of other testing sites. So you still have NRH2O, the JP Elder, and TCC Southeast Campus that will remain open after April. So also with the addition of the newest UNT Health Science Center site that opened this morning at the Saginaw Recreation Center, there are now 9 public health partnership vaccination sites throughout the county. UNT is here to give additional information about their new site and their vaccination efforts, so I won't go into too much detail. But as I said, the new site is located at the Saginaw Recreation Center, and it will be open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 p.m. and by appointment only. In addition to the new site in the Northwest, Tarrant County is also partnering with TCC and Hearst to open a drive-through site at the TCC Northeast campus. That'll be in coordination with the Hearst Conference Center site that's already up and running. The details are still in the works on that as far as how we'll divvy up the cars as they come in. But the equipment is there and ready to go once we decide to get that moving. The vaccination data that is listed on here is lagging a bit because of the holidays, but I believe the total number was updated today by Vinny. And as of late last night, JPS numbers were updated to reflect a total of actually 70,885 doses versus the 65,000 that are shown on there. The last couple of bullets are just notations about the launch of UNT Health Science Center vaccine marketing campaign, which they will discuss in greater detail. And then information related to the vaccination transportation program. A quick note on that transportation program. Kristen is currently working with JPS to add their vaccination sites to the existing program. Okay, any questions on the vaccination update slide?
Just a quick comment. The agreement with the Trinity Metro, that has been canceled now?
Yes.
Okay, that's the one that was taking individuals to the Arlington site that we talked about last time, so it is now canceled.
Hey, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry, Commissioner. The last week we spoke about the program we had with Trinity Metro that would take individuals to the Arlington site. And because of low ridership, you all asked that we work to cancel that contract, and we have done that.
Do we know the total ridership that we had for that program with Trinity Metro?
I know that Kristen had that. I don't think we have it. She may be able to pull it up as we talk through this, and we'll be able to give it to you maybe at the end of Megan's presentation.
Associate those numbers with the cost also.
We'll have to get back with you on that. Yes, we'll do that, but we'll get back with you next week on that.
Okay, so we also have our vaccination call center broken down by zip code. Last Wednesday, I had sent out some data that was asked for last week related to the call volume, the breakdown of requests, specifically registration requests, average callback times, and average hold times. The total volume of calls has been between 13,000 to 15,000 per week, and the average number of callers that are seeking registration assistance is approximately 1,080. I also sent out call center data broken down by precinct, I believe on Monday, to each of you, and I'll be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have related to the call center. I also have Kathy here.
And we got the wait time down to?
I believe so. I think it's actually less than 15 minutes now.
Okay.
Kathy, is that correct? Yes. Okay. Okay, and then the last two slides, there are no substantial changes to. It's just our grant update and then our spend update. And that's all that I have if there are no other questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
If there's no questions, I'm going to ask Dr. Trent Adams to come forward and begin the presentation from the Health Science Center. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Judge Whitley and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here again to report on the partnership between University of North Texas Health Science Center at Fort Worth and the Tarrant County on the Vaccine Administration Board for the county area. Today, my colleague David Mansdorf and I will be providing an update on a couple of items. The snapshot of the activity to date, basically giving you a status on the vaccine sites, our media and communication strategy, and where we are with deploying those resources to the community. our efforts in registration, and also we'll talk briefly about our future sites. Okay. Our first slide is to give you an overview of of where we are today by the numbers. We have 2 active vaccine sites at this time. We have 4 future site locations that have been identified and vetted, and they have been identified as Ridgemar Mall, Grand Prairie, Arlington, and also we have one that's slotted for Halton City. And so those are up and coming. We'll keep you posted on when those will go live. To date, we have 1,698 vaccines that have been administered, and this is primarily in our first site, which is at Stop 6 area at Brighter Outlook at Ebenezer Baptist Church. The future projection of vaccines allocated to HSC in Tarrant County, we have yet to nail those down. We will be working with GK and Benny to make sure we have adequate supply. We do understand from the team here at Tarrant County that vaccine supply is loosening up, and we do expect to have significant increase in access to vaccines in the weeks coming. Those sites that are becoming online, therefore, will have enough vaccine, hopefully, to be able to launch very quickly, to include those areas identified, those 4 sites that we've already vetted and have not determined start dates yet. We're also looking for areas in the north area that would be including Precinct 3. So we've been working with the team. I know that David Mansfield has been working to try to find locations in the other areas where there is high need. HSC right now has capacity for 20,000 to 30,000 shots per week, and that is given the number of sites that we have that are live. The next thing is I wanted to mention is we do work to make sure you are aware we have registration drives that are planned. There are 17 that are scheduled. We will continue to have registration drives throughout this process because registration is critical to make sure we can identify how many vaccines are planned for a given day, and then where there's extra capacity, offer walk-in access for the individuals who have not been able to register for whatever reason. We have had over 127 million media impressions, and David will go into more detail about that. Next slide here. So our overall update, we have established vaccine locations throughout the entire county at this time. We are using a phased approach based on vaccine allocation and also looking at where there's the greatest need, i.e. new infections or where those areas that have been hardest hit but had the lowest amount of vaccine registration and vaccines delivered in both first and second doses. Our 2 active sites at this time are in Stop 6 and the Saginaw area. As was mentioned by Megan earlier today, we did launch Saginaw this morning. Had a great outpouring of support for that site. The mayor, Flippo, was very pleased, and we did have a chance to do some media with him on site as well. We have at least 4 future sites identified. We will definitely keep you posted on those. We will be launching those in the same way. We'll be doing rollouts and press releases on each site as they come live. Our Stronger Together marketing strategy has been deployed and is active, and David will go into more detail about that as well. Community programming. Registration drives and listening sessions have been conducted. We are working with our OptumServe contractor to make sure that we get feedback from the community. I will say this, one of the things that we are highlighting now is, as I said, registration has to continue to be an active part of our outreach and engagement. We have to reach the homebound population. We're in the works of putting something together this week to make that happen. And we need to also look at the possibility of walk-in access, on-demand vaccine and having registration available for people as we get to the point that we have vaccine available on site to be able to do that. And last but not least, we're planning to undergo some in-home vaccination for homebound individuals, not this week, but we're starting to get that in place for hopefully when we come back to report to you, we'll have vaccines already been delivered. We're working in coordination with MedStar as well as with our geriatric center at the HSC campus. Dr. Janice Knievel has been very helpful in identifying the needs for the homebound population and identifying those partners from Meals on Wheels and United Way to help us to gather information, as well as receiving lists from the faith-based community. Each of the pastors that we've talked to have provided us with lists of their members who need access to vaccines, and we'll be doing direct contact with them through the faith-based community or our partners to get a time and a place that we can come and deliver those vaccines when we stand that part up. So I will stop there. My colleague David Mansdorf will now come up and provide the updates on our communications and media plan.
Well, before you leave, let me just ask, and David may be going to cover this, but with regards, you made the statement that y'all were at the point now where you could administer 30 to 35,000 vaccines per week, I believe.
We're in a position right now to deliver up to between 25 and 30,000 per week.
Does that include the
Pending.
4 future sites, or is that just the 2 sites that you've got open right now?
If we have sufficient registration, that's how many we could deliver with the teams that we have allocated. But it's all dependent upon vaccine supply.
Trust me, you can't administer what you ain't got.
Yes, sir. So we do have teams that are available to staff at that capacity if we
Okay.
need it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning. Thanks again for the Saginaw.
Yes, we heard loud and clear that was an area of need. So moving forward, again, my name's David Mansdorfer. Happy to be with you again. So give you a little bit of an overview of our campaign objectives on the communications and outreach strategy, give you some actual numbers of what we're trying to do and the mediums of how we're trying to do it. So you'll see our overarching goal is about a total reach of about 127 million impressions. And impressions are important because it's the number of times someone sees a particular effort. And so our goal is to drive a registration effort to increase the registration, but do that by saturating the marketplace a number of different ways. So through print, and that's things like the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and local magazines and different distribution methods. We have about 8 million impressions ironed out for that. You're going to see a significant billboard campaign all throughout Tarrant County, which will go to tarrantcountystrong.com, which is the portal. It's a microsite URL that will shift to the Tarrant County Public Health site for registration. And that those total impressions will be about 34 million, roughly. Out of home, we know in a lot of the underserved communities that the grocery store and gas stations is where they see a lot of their information. There's actually a really interesting marketing technique where you can buy some of the billboard space within a lot of these gas stations and saturate the market really well. So we're banking on about 52 million impressions within that space, which will really help us target some of the underserved communities. Broadcast radio, we have a direct mail budget allocation, digital display, paid social, and streaming radio as well too. So we're really looking for a large saturation very quickly. I've told folks that our goal is really to focus on the next 3 months because I think that's where we're going to have the best chance to change consumer behavior around vaccine and vaccine hesitancy. So you're going to see a lot of the overall total reach go between now and June 30th with some ability to micro-target near the back end of our deal, which extends through September 30th. Again, they will be multilingual, so majority will be English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, but we will also have capabilities to do micro-targeting within certain communities and certain language groups. I think I went the wrong way. We also have our toolkits that are getting up online as well. We have the online toolkit, which folks have been using. We've seen a lot of activity on that site where folks are using the information in the social media posts and other things within their own communities and within their own organizations. So that's very positive. We have 17 registration events scheduled in East and Northwest Fort Worth. Again, we're prioritizing based on our zip codes on registrations. And those are actually, it's a great effort. It's being led by our students. Again, go back to our core mission at the Health Science Center, really getting the students out into the field. And again, they're appreciative of the training, but it seems to resonate a lot better in these communities to have some of these students out there because of that, the humbleness in which they approach what they're doing. We are continuing to work with faith, retail, schools, and community groups to expand reach and build on the goodwill fostered by many of the community leaders that have stepped up, folks that you have recommended to us. Again, it's been an all-hands-on-deck type effort, and we continue to see really positive momentum as we try and continue to drive this forward. Again, to circle back a little bit, we have future sites. Commissioner Allen, I'm going to call you out specifically. We have I'd love to meet with you, very shortly, because I have a couple questions about sites within your district, and I think we can get something ramped up pretty quickly over there, and I'm excited about what we're doing over there. But you'll see kind of the sprinkling. In all honesty, the Arlington and Grand Prairie and Ridgemar Mall are pretty close to being able to come online again with some questions about how we navigate a couple of things. But we're very positive and excited to bring those online potentially very soon, again, based on the vaccine capabilities as we've been allocated. And I will mention as a kind of final part, we are working hand in hand with the business community to make sure that as we get additional vaccines, it's not just HSC necessarily that's going to be out doing it, but working with Vinnie and the closed pods that you've all are already looked at, but the larger corporations that that are throughout Tarrant County, because a lot of them have the capacity to do this themselves. And so we're going to kind of work potentially as a consultant to them as well to make sure that they're up and ready to go. So if you do get the availability of 50, 60, 70,000, it doesn't have to go all to the capacity you have, but we could bring in some of our other players. And as we're starting to see demand wane just a little bit on this, the employers are really going to be the ones that help us take that next step. And so bringing them into the fold earlier rather than later is really going to be important as we get to what our optimal goal here is in Tarrant County.
David, one of the other things that you might, and I'll be glad to kind of maybe help on this, but working with the Catholic bishop of this diocese as well as the Methodist bishop and some other the church organizations, because I think some of the folks who may be reluctant to trust the vaccines might be a little bit more comfortable if it was coming through their church, and I think that may be another place to put some of your pop-up locations.
Yep.
And I think would be a good place to start. Have you done any work with some of the pharmacies? Because I noticed this week, not only did the hubs get a lot more, but there were over 31,000 vaccines given to the smaller pharmacies, and a lot of that is Johnson & Johnson. So has there been any conversation with maybe working with the pharmacies to see if they would be interested in going in and doing, I know that they've done actually some partnerships with some of the employers.
They have, and a lot of that effort's being driven at the national level to saturate out with the Walgreens, the Walmarts, and the grocery store chains, as well as CVS. We have had several. Our School of Pharmacy has been right there, and working through all of that. But there, as we are tiered in approaches, with the amount of vaccines that we have, I think really the next step is probably the employers and then the pharmacy, given that the national scope is really going to be taking care of the pharmacy side. I think they're going to probably be the next part of this effort. As we know, basically as we go through this entire thing, the higher levels we get, the easy will be because of the ease of access. And so pharmacies will be there. Your primary care providers are going to be an important step. I know that's being discussed at the national level as well too. So you're going to start to see some of these harder access areas get it because of the access in which they normally get health care are going to start receiving this. And that really starts at the primary care and the pharmacy level.
Is the Grand Prairie location out around the Vietnamese community there off Rosedale or in that area?
They are, we have several sites within that area, and that's part of the conversation I want to have with Commissioner Allen. We have a couple of churches and a warehouse, I think, over in that area that are all under consideration, but all are targeted to address that particular community as well.
Great. Any other questions?
Yeah, are you looking at anything up in the northeast other than, I know we cited Hearst, but up in the North Fort Worth, off 377 or in Grapevine?
Yes, that's actually where I think the employers are going to have the best, we have a couple of great organizations that we're working with that are up in that general area. That's part of it. I know we've been in conversations with GK and Vinny about making sure I'm not stepping on your all's toes when I'm doing something and you're not gonna. We're creating greater efficiencies. So yes, we are looking up there. I know Haltom City is one of the areas that we're looking at, and but we're also looking at pushing up further north. Again, remember my sites are 8 weeks, so I'm going to pivot them based on where the data is. So as we go out through this entire thing, we are going to be shifting these sites as we go, and that pocket will definitely receive attention.
Okay, because Haltom City is like inside the loop.
Yeah.
It's just north of downtown Fort Worth. It's not the northeast.
Yep.
Okay.
Understood.
It's the northeast, it's just not in your precinct.
No
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. I don't have a map right in front of me, so I'm.
Any other questions for David at this time? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you all.
Members of the court, if we could now, we have a briefing item, and it deals with the COVID issue, and this is the weekly presentation by Mr. Tanaja.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the court.
Good morning.
So we'll quickly cover our routine briefing. First of all, I wanted to point out, after a long time, the North Texas map is all green, so that's great news. We're, I think, pretty much in all of the counties except for maybe Denton and Ellis, Navarro maybe. We're all like below 5% on hospitalizations. So it's looking pretty good. I mean, we're below the 10% mark all across, and overall, I think TSAE is about 3.42% hospitalization. That's 531 people in the hospital with COVID. So compared to where we've been, it's relatively low. And then, of course, Tarrant County, is doing great, 3.72% on hospitalizations with 159 people in the hospital. 40 of those are in the ICU, but that number is declining, so that's great. Overall, we have 252,000 cases. This morning, we added 585 cases, but that's an accumulation over the last 4 days. Due to the holiday, there was sort of low reporting and things like that. 3,324 deaths, I think that's another 10 or 14 deaths added. So things are looking very good. We're in a continuous trend down. There are a couple of indicators that are showing some activity that's brewing, but overall trend remains down. Let me get to those real quick. The chart here shows that the positivity rate has been flatlining for the last 3 weeks or so. We hit a low of 5%, bounced back up to 7%, came to 6%, back to 7%. So we're essentially flatlined at a good amount of activity in the community. It's not super low, but it's below the 10% mark, so that's good news. Why I stress this is because we're past spring break and we're seeing some of that. And then, of course, yesterday was a big opening day for the Rangers, and all of those things give me a little worried. It's great for all of us. At least people got back to do some normal activities, but that was a lot of people together in a situation where things could go bad from a disease standpoint. It's still pretty active in the community. But other indicators looking very good. COVID-like illness is down below almost close, below 2%. I think we're like at 1.5%. And interestingly, again, flu has perked back up above COVID-like illness rates. So there's more flu in the community than there is COVID right now. So that's great news. All the hospitalization charts are pointing down. The case rate is at 55 for 100,000. Doubling time is at 110 days, so it took us 110 days to double our numbers. The only other harbinger of some activity brewing is that our not, which is the doubling rate or the infection spread rate, is speeding up a little. We were as low as 0.53. We're back up to 0.9. Below 1 is good. That means we're still slowing down. But there is some, combined with the positivity rate in this, there is some concern that
If we continue to do what we did yesterday, we're asking for trouble. So again, the message remains the same for everybody, that, and I'll come back to this slide, that we need to wear our masks. We need to maintain a 6-foot distance, which wasn't happening yesterday. And we need to avoid large crowds, which, yesterday was a prime example. Let's not ask for trouble. And we need to continue to wash our hands. Fun and games, we need to get back to life. We got to support our businesses. We get that. Let's just not do it in a way where we're in dire straits again. Okay, so coming back, why do I keep cautioning on these things? U.S. data is starting to show there's another sort of an uptick in activity. There's a lot of consternation about, hey, is this the start of a fourth wave? Don't know. Time will tell. Is it going to get as big as the one that we saw back in December, January? Hope not. We've had vaccines. People know what to do. But the concerns always remain that it could take off. Other countries are experiencing it. India's got a pretty large surge. In Europe, there's three countries that have a huge surge. There are different strains. Of course, the news has been about the UK strain circulating now in all 50 states. We've had 3 or 4 states pay a pretty heavy price. Florida, past spring break, has a big surge going. And I think they've exported that to Michigan. Michigan's got the highest numbers, I think, across the country right now. And New York got hit because there were a lot of spring break crowd that went back. And I believe there's a separate outbreak that started out of Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and now they're trying to sort of mitigate that. So things can go wrong despite all the efforts. And then yesterday there's been a lot of coverage about this double mutant strain out of India. Again, these things do happen. So let's not give COVID an opportunity to overpower us again, and we need to do all the right things. Now, there's been a lot of talk about personal responsibility. 40,000 people crowding in a stadium was a bad example of personal responsibility. So we need to be very, very mindful of what we do, because this is still out there and active in our community. But all in all, things are in a downward trend despite all the challenges, to the point where we're ready to lower our level from substantial to moderate spread in the community. Question came a couple of times, when you do that, does anything change? Not really. I mean, all the restrictions have been lifted. So now would have been the time to do that, but that's okay. We're here. So over the next couple of days, we'll just kind of watch the indicators to see that nothing, turns the tide, but I think we're ready to lower that onto a moderate spread onto our dashboard. What that indicates is that there's not as strict mitigation efforts that are needed in our community, across Texas. We're 100% open, so that's kind of a moot point at this point. Going back to, did you have any question on the COVID information before I move on to vaccine slides? Okay. All right. On the vaccine update, you heard the new site opening. So there's the schedule for this week. So the highlighted one was the Saginaw site that opened this morning. Other than that, we've got pretty regularly scheduled activity for COVID vaccine. This week is going to be a pretty heavy week all across. We have a lot of second dose people due, and of course we got more first doses coming. So it's going to be pretty much packed at every site. So I ask people who are coming to bring their patients because it gets busy. So there's a lot of people that are going to get vaccinated this week, which is great. Here's the update on our dashboard. And again, the data is obviously a week old already because just the way the files arrived to us, it's a little behind. But 581,000 doses administered across the county, and about 18% of the county has received at least one dose. 9% of the county, which is almost 200,000 people, have completed their series. And I think I might have briefed you all last week. Our judge has been involved in some conversations with us, with DSHS. We know that there's gaps in this data, so we're working with them to make sure that we get the latest information out so that we can see a better picture of what's happening. But the good news is once those gaps are filled, we're going to see, more people have been vaccinated, so that's the truth. It's just that the data is sort of lagging behind.
Yeah, last week we were 351,000 shots difference between what they showed and what we showed.
153,000.
300.
300. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So we're working with them to rectify, and it's not just, it's not just us. I mean, it's all across.
Yeah, I mean, it's all over the state.
Right.
Yeah.
It just,
They're behind.
There's a lot of issues, but.
now were you able to get from Dr. Mel, is it Garcia?
Yep, Ms. Garcia.
Were you able to get the state's data as of Sunday?
I was not. I believe the file drops in today or late last night. I'll have to check with the staff. That's why we don't get to post it on the dashboard before Tuesday, because it
We've
comes
got to
in.
do a better job of reconciling on a weekly basis. They are 2 or 3 days behind on any given day. And that's not just with, I mean, everybody got excited about it last week because DC started calling the governor wanting to know why we were only vaccinating 50% are using only 50% of the vaccines that they'd sent to Texas. Well, it wasn't quite that way.
So on the next slide, it just shows, well, it got frozen. I need help to get this moved. There you go. This is just showing the signups. Again, the point of this is there's gaps in areas, and there are efforts underway to rectify that. But signups overall are slowing down. Despite all the categories being open, I think we're now starting to get to that pocket in the community where we're going to have to do some, more convincing that vaccine is needed and why people should get vaccinated, because there might be people who are just hesitant for a variety of reasons. Life gets in the way, restrictions are lifted, COVID cases are down. Do I need to get vaccinated? Yes, everybody needs to get vaccinated. And I think that's going to be the messaging that we need to just continue to push so that we can really end this, COVID outbreak once for all. And then let me get to the next slide. It just shows the demographics. If I can get help from the back to move to the next slide. Okay. I think we're frozen.
Advance the slide if you can, please.
There we go. Thank you. So the demographics are certainly showing that there's some improvements, but again, as the numbers get large, the percentages move a little bit slower, but a lot of good coverage happening all across the county. Again, there's some disparities and things that we need to continue to work on, but people who have signed up with us have been given vaccination appointments with priority. The FEMA site being in town has really helped address that gap. So we've been able to pretty much, address it to the best we can. Now it's a matter of getting folks signed up in these areas so we can get them vaccinated. Next slide, please. And this is the final data summary slide, just an update from the charts that were asked. Again, kind of correlates with what we've been showing, but this is more internal data that we know is not always reflected on the dashboard because there's just delays and things on that getting there.
And again, these are the 3 hubs only.
Yes.
If we added in the other pharmacies, smaller clinics, things along that lines that go straight to them, we're well over 700, almost 800,000
Yes,
probably
sir.
by now.
Very accurate. That's all I have, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Vinny, I just would encourage everyone, let's keep that reconcilement going, and if you have problems getting that sheet from Dr. Garcia, please let me know, and I'll see if I can't make somebody mad enough to give it to me.
I think they promised us a weekly data sheet.
But
So
they
we'll
forget those promises on occasion.
Yes, sir. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Vinny.
Thanks, Vinny.
So that concludes our presentation on this.
Okay, with that, then we're going to proceed to,
I'll do the county auditors section.
okay.
Members of the court, if we can go to the county auditors section, item 8B. On item number 1, we're requesting that the court release approximately $34,128,000 of collateral and accept the substitution of securities in market value of $29,128,000 as requested in the attached letters to your court communication.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And then finally, on the auditor section, on item B2, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court receive and file the financial statements for the 1-month financial statements for the month ending October 31st, 2020.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the October financials. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your
I
Honor.
will say I wish that I hadn't thought about it last week, but Suzanne McKenzie retired after, I guess, close to 34 years of service.
Right.
And she has done a tremendous service for Tarrant County, and we will miss her, and I know they will miss her in the audit area. Ms. Glenn, please come forward.
Move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning, Tina.
The next two items that we have are requests for changes in the table of organization. The first is for the auditor's office. Ms. Tidwell is requesting the addition of a grant manager's position effective April 10th. The incumbent of this position will supervise financial reporting related to the CARES Act as well as the American Rescue Plan Act. There is no impact to the general fund.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Our next TO change is from the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff is requesting the court's approval to reactivate the jail medical liaison effective April 10th. This is a position that did exist in the table of organization, was eliminated, I believe, in 2017. And so the sheriff has asked for its reinstatement. The incumbent of this position will be responsible for providing health care to county inmates, as well as monitoring the quality of their health care. Additionally, the sheriff is requesting that the hiring rate be adjusted to minimum plus 20%. Ordinarily, it's minimum plus 10%. This position will be funded by commissary funds.
Move for approval.
Approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And our fourth and final item, we're asking the court to rescind court order number 135020 and approve changes to the tables of organization for the 233rd District Court and the Sheriff's Office. So what we should have requested, as is explained in your court communique, is 2 new positions, an associate judge for the 233rd District Court, Judge Newell's Court, as well as a second position for the Sheriff's Department, a deputy sheriff. Both positions will be working with CPS cases. We are estimating an impact to the general fund of approximately $282,152 and some change. That does include fringe benefits.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, now, I guess I was just thinking this was a bailiff.
When it came to the court, when it came last, the request was for a judge's bailiff, and that was not correct. We should have simply asked for the addition of a deputy sheriff, which is what we're requesting today.
So
and of course, the deputy sheriff's position, they are in the sheriff's table of organization, and they simply report to the judge's court, as opposed to a bailiff who actually reports directly to the judge. So we simply asked for the wrong thing. Should have been a deputy sheriff.
One deputy sheriff is costing us $282,000?
No, sir. The cost would be for both positions. I'm sorry, Mr. Mays.
No, you're fine.
The cost what?
The cost, the total cost of $282,152 are for both positions. It's for the deputy sheriff as well as the associate judge.
Oh,
So
associate
let-
judge.
yeah.
Okay, now I know what we're doing. Now I know where we are.
The only reason that we're rescinding this and asking you to approve this, you've already approved the two positions. But when we came to you the first time, we thought this was going to be a bailiff position in the TO of the court. It's really a deputy sheriff on the security division, which will be the bailiff, but it will be in the sheriff's TO.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes. Yes.
So we have 4 with 1 abstention.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And I'm going to go back.
I don't
Mr.
know.
Reyes, could I get you to come to, I noticed on one of our consent items under facility management, I see that we're talking about the generator for the Juvenile Justice Center. And I want to be sure that as we look at, I know we're looking at doing something out there with, it says replacing, but would you please follow back up through that and look at all the, not only the generators at that particular location, because it was my understanding we had one that didn't work, but in addition to that, we had some units that were not hooked up to a generator.
Correct.
So I'd like to go back and look at whatever information we have with regards to that, because I mean, it was my understanding that we also tested the generator the week before, and I'm finding, I can't understand how it could have been tested and worked and then broke, or how the generators could have been tested and us not have realized that we got units down there that weren't hooked up to the generator. So I'd like for us to kind of look at all of that, but at the same time, and I know that's far beyond, I'd also like us to do an overall just review of generators within the county, and you know, what are they doing, how much will they do, and how much won't they do? Because I think Commissioner Brooks, I saw something on here today about a generator at your Miller Street.
Miller Avenue, yes.
So,
I can get that report to you.
welcome aboard, and you can do this one and not have to worry about it because it was all happened before you got here.
No worries. I'll get that to you.
Thank you very much.
That doesn't mean we're not going to hold him responsible for it.
This is the one time when it rolls uphill instead of rolling downhill.
All right, I'll get that to
If
you.
you catch my jest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa?
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Melissa.
We have 2 items for your consideration. The first item is an award recommendation for bid number 2021-040, Analytical Instrumentation, awarding Section 2 only, and rebid with revised specifications for Section 1. This is for the liquid chromatography with mass spectrometer and Fourier transform infrared spectrometer, sorry.
Easy for you to say.
This is what call Mr. Mass on NCIS.
Yes.
Like, we used to use
Move for
those when I
approval.
was in college,
Second.
Me too.
back in the
Mass
60s, 70s.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Shimadzu.
What?
Shimadzu.
Awarding to Shimadzu Scientific Instruments in the amount of $286,006.
Mr. Mass is expensive. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The second and last item is an award recommendation for bid number 2021-054, Miller Avenue Generator Additions for Facilities Management, awarding to CEC Facilities Group in the amount of $474,760. If approved, we're also requesting contract approval and acceptance of the payment and performance bond.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. There's those generators. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fickus?
Yes, I have an interlocal with the city of Watauga, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the interlocal agreement with Watauga. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments today? Okay, then you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, additional briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members, we have one final item that we'd like to talk with you about, and that's our legislative update. Mr. Schaffner has provided each of you with a memo, and we've also included that in your court book. We have three areas that we talked about. We talked about at least two of these last week. One is the COVID-19 presumption for workers' compensation claims. That piece of legislation is still moving through, or those pieces of legislation. There's actually about 20 of those. We are trying to get some clarity as far as who makes the determination as to send someone home as it relates to this. And we're working with not only our workers' comp attorney, but also human resources. And we're continuing to monitor and attempting to modify that particular bill. As it relates to the Texas Courts of Appeal, once again, we talked about this the other day. This would have a fiscal impact to the county if, in fact, we would do something like this, up to $16 million as far as build out of facilities for this type of a court of appeal. It's a reduction in the total number of courts of appeal. They would maintain the same number of appellate judges in the state, but they would then increase the number of judges that would be assigned to each appellate court. So we are working on that. There's also a House Bill 1529 that talks about a statewide court of appeals that deals specifically with cases between the state and other governmental entities, which is kind of an interesting take. And as I said, we're monitoring those, and we don't know how successful those bills will be. Right now, when we're at this point in the legislature, it's pretty aggressive down there. And so we're sending some extra people down to help Russell, and hopefully we'll stay up on top of that along with the team from the other urban counties. And then finally, the law enforcement funding. I think that Russell is doing a really good job on that one. This is the one of defunding local law enforcement by local governments. We have made the case that county governments are different than municipal governments because we're required to do statutory responsibilities that are established by the state themselves. You look at our jail operations, you look at the fact that a single county like Tarrant County doesn't have one law enforcement entity, but actually has one sheriff's department, 8 constables' offices, and a fire marshal's office that are all law enforcement. And it looks like we're going to be able to prevail on our position on that, and if that comes to fruition, well then we will not be negatively impacted on this particular bill.
Excellent.
So, members, I know that each of you are communicating with Russell on a daily or every other day basis, and I encourage you to continue to do that. I will attempt to answer any questions you may have on this memorandum or any other legislative issues that you may have at this time.
Excuse me. GK, is this map, I noticed that there's cities mentioned here. Is that like within two? Is El Paso and Midland both going to do it, or are they going to move everything to Midland?
It's my understanding what the cities are is where those current courts are.
Where the current courts
are located. And so they may be sitting in each of those cities, but they will also may come and sit in a central city also. So that has not been clearly defined, but there's a possibility of that. That's one reason why I believe our number of our appellate judges would move from 8 to 14, and with that it would mean an expansion of the site that we have up in the Curry building. We would actually probably have to look at building the top floor out on the civil courts building to house all of those judges, and
What's
that's
the
really
philosophy behind this?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah.
They've kind of gerrymandered, the one we're in. I mean,
There may be some political purpose behind this.
I wonder, I wonder what Brown County has to do with Bowie County, which is on the far east. So, other than they both start with a B.
I'm not gonna touch it.
Oh, Lord.
We do not have any other questions. That is all we have at this time.
We do have a closed session,
Yes, that's correct.
so we will recess this meeting. Having returned from closed session, there being no business to conduct at this time, we stand adjourned, and please remember to close in memory of Christine Galbraith. Or Gilbert.
How long did she serve